Senator Menendez will be back shortly. He had a vote in the Senate Finance Committee. I'll take my time at this particular moment, and let me just join our chairman and ranking member in thanking our two panelists for your service to our country. I agree with much of what Senator Risch just said in regards to mistakes made by 4 administrations. And in hindsight, it's a lot easier to see those mistakes. But in real time, it's more challenging, as everyone has pointed out. But I want to first underscore the point that Senator Menendez made, and that is the decision to go into Iraq when we thought they had weapons of mass destruction. That was a mistake of intelligence. At least that's as it was presented to us at the time. But there was no evidence that Iraq was involved in the 9/11 attacks. So we changed our mission in the Middle East at that time. Afghanistan was, as a result of the attack on our country, Iraq distracted our military, at least, from the mission in Afghanistan. So it's clear to me that that had an impact on our success in Afghanistan if we would have not been also engaged at that time in an active war in Iraq and dealing with the challenges in Iraq. I recognize that America can do more than one thing at a time, but when we're engaged in 2 recent military operations and we haven't completed the first, and the missions are somewhat inconsistent, it does, to me, distract from our ability to carry out our responsibility in Afghanistan. I want to get to the issue of corruption. Ambassador Crocker, I thought you made an excellent point. We recognize that we cannot change a society overnight. We understand the patronage society. We recognize that. But where America is filling a significant part of the financial needs of a country, there seems to me that there could have been safeguards put in place to make sure that the aid that we gave went to the people and not just to fuel the corruption of the principal leaders. And this was over a 20-year period that we were unable to reach the people of Afghanistan to the extent necessary to get the type of popular support for the type of governance that they had, causing the counterinsurgencies and the aftermath that we see today. So, yes, I understand patience. 20 years may not have been long enough for some, but I think there was wasted time during the 20 years in trying to establish a more responsive government for the people of Afghanistan. And the United States, lessons learned, there has to be a way that we can reinforce a governance where the people get the benefit of our assistance rather than the corrupt leaders. So, Ambassador Miller, I heard your point. You said never in the history have we seen a successful example. Corruption exists in all countries. I recognize that. But it seems to me that our engagement in Afghanistan actually assisted the corruption of the regime, causing significant dissatisfaction among the populace for the United States presence.
I would agree that our assistance helped to fuel corruption. It was just an enormous scale of money to be pumping into a country with a very limited economy and where there was a lot of competition for resources, especially on the military side in terms of large-scale contracting for transportation and fuel, which were just 2 of the areas where a lot of corruption has been, a lot of siphoning off of resources has been revealed. And, you know, there are a lot of Afghans who became very wealthy as a result of American contracting there. Their, villas in Dubai don't build themselves. That's ultimately funded with American taxpayer resources. I think part of the problem, and it's a real conundrum, is that it's very difficult for us, given our system, our political system and our foreign assistance system, to pace ourselves in these kinds of interventions. Initially, there were very small sums, relatively, spent in Afghanistan. As the situation worsened and it became a higher political priority, there was a perceived need and an opportunity to gain appropriations of larger resources and then to have to spend them within the time scale of those appropriations. And so it leads to a dynamic where there's an impulse to get as much funding as you can, as quickly as you can, and spend it as quickly as you can when it's a political high priority, knowing that that's going to fade and you're not going to be able to sustain it over time. So it's very difficult for us to pace our spending in an intervention like this with 1 and 2 year funding cycles, as opposed to longer term funding cycles that some other governments, for instance, the European Union, have in their civilian assistance programs. I don't have an answer to that. As I said, it's a conundrum. If less had been spent at the peak, there probably would have been criticism that not enough was being spent, even though the people involved in spending it knew the absorptive capacity was just not there to spend that much money that quickly and maintain the oversight that's necessary to prevent corruption.
Lessons learned, as I see it, is that we have to have a strategy to make sure that our engagement does not reinforce the greed of corrupt leaders. And that was, I think, absent in Afghanistan. Senator Johnson.
If I could.
I'm sorry, Ambassador Crocker, briefly?
Yeah, yes, if I could. Our most successful programs in Afghanistan cost the least and went directly to the Afghan people. Education and healthcare. The number of students in Afghan schools when I arrived in 2002 was about 900,000, all boys. And when I left as ambassador in 2012, over 8 million, 35% girls. Similarly, in healthcare, we reduced dramatically the death rate from infant and maternal mortality. They worked, they cost less, and they went directly to the Afghan people. We should look for programs like that and avoid major infrastructure projects. And I agree completely with Ms. Miller. We need to look at our own budget processes. Our internal processes contribute a great deal to waste and mismanagement in Afghanistan.
Thank you. I appreciate that response. Senator Johnson.
Thanks, Senator Cardin. I also want to thank the witnesses. Ambassador Crocker, thanks for your